Good morning. Today we read Richard Sibbes' classic, The Bruised, and today we're in chapter 25, Christ's victory shall be openly victorious. It is not only said judgment shall be victorious, but that Christ will bring it openly forth to victory. When we observe that grace shall be glory and run into the eyes of all. Now Christ doth conquer, and hath his own ends, but it is in some sort invisibly. His enemies within and without us seem to have the better, but he will bring forth judgment unto victory to the view of all. The wicked that now shut their eyes shall see it to their torment. It shall not be in the power of subtle men to see or not see what they would. Christ will have power over their hearts, and as his wrath shall immediately seize upon their souls against their will, so he will have power over the eyes of their souls, to see and know what will increase their misery. Grief shall be fastened on all their senses, and their senses to grief. Then all the false glosses which they put upon things shall be wiped off. Men are desirous to have the reputation of good, and yet the sweetness of ill. Nothing so cordially opposed by them as that truth which layeth them open to themselves and to the eyes of others, their chief care being how to daub with the world and with their own consciences. But the time will come when they shall be driven out of this fool's paradise, and the more subtle their conveyance of things hath been, the more shall be their shame. Christ, whom God hath chosen to set forth the chief glory of his excellencies, is now veiled in regard of his body the church, but will come ere long to be glorious in his saints, 2 Thessalonians 1:10, and not lose the clear manifestation of any of his attributes, and will declare to all the world what he is, when there shall be no glory but that of Christ and his spouse. Those that are as now smoking flax shall then shine as the sun in the firmament, Matthew 13:43, and their righteousness break forth as the noonday, Psalm 37:6. The image of God in Adam had a commanding majesty in it, so that all creatures reverenced him. Much more shall the image of God in the perfection of it command respect in all. Even now there is a secret awe put into the hearts of the greatest, toward those in whom they see any grace to shine, from whence it was that Herod feared John the Baptist. But what will this be in their day of bringing forth, which is called the day of the revelation of the sons of God, Romans 8:19. There will be more glorious times when the kingdoms of the earth shall be the Lord Jesus Christ's, Revelation 11:10, and he shall reign forever. Then shall judgment and truth have its victory. Then Christ will plead his own cause. Truth shall no longer be called heresy and schism, nor heresy Catholic doctrine. Wickedness shall no longer go masked and disguised. Goodness shall appear in its own luster and shine in its own beams. Things shall be what they are. Nothing is hidden but shall be laid open, Matthew 10:26. Iniquity shall not be carried in a mystery any longer. Deep dissemblers that think to hide their counsels from the Lord shall no longer walk invisible as in the clouds. As Christ will not quench the least spark kindled by himself, so he will damp the fairest blaze of goodly appearances which are not from above. Use. If this were believed, men would make more account of sincerity, which will only give us boldness, and not seek for cover shames, the confidence whereof as it maketh men now more presumptuous, so it will expose them hereafter to the greater shame. If judgment be brought forth to victory, then those that have been ruled by their own deceitful hearts and a spirit of error shall be brought forth to disgrace. That God hath joined grace and truth with honor, hath joined sin and shame together at last, all the wit and power of man can never be able to sever what God hath coupled. Truth and piety may be trampled upon for a time, but as the two witnesses, Revelation 11:11, after they were slain rose again and stood upon their feet, so whatsoever is of God shall at length stand upon its own feet. There shall be a resurrection not only of bodies but of credits. Can we think that he that threw the angels out of heaven will suffer dust and worms' meat to run a contrary course, and to carry it always so? No, as verily as Christ is King of kings and Lord of lords, Revelation 19:16. So he will dash all those pieces of the earth which rise up against him as a potter's vessel, Psalm 2:9. Was there ever any fierce against God and prospered, Job 9:4? No, Doubtless the rage of man shall turn to Christ's praise. Psalm 76:10. What was said of Pharaoh shall be said of all heady enemies who would rather lose their souls than their wills, that they are but raised up for Christ to get himself glory in their confusion. Let us then take heed that we follow not the ways of those men whose ends we shall tremble at. There is not a more fearful judgment can befall the nature of man than to be given up to a reprobate judgment of persons and things, because it cometh under a woe to call ill good and good ill. Isaiah 5:20. How they will be laden with curses another day, and that abuse the judgment of others by sophistry and flattery, deceivers and being deceived. 2 Timothy 3:13. Then the complaint of our first mother Eve will be taken up, but fruitlessly. Genesis 13:3. The serpent hath deceived me. Satan and such hath deceived me. Sin hath deceived me. A foolish heart hath deceived me. It is one of the highest points of wisdom to consider upon what grounds we venture our souls. Happy men will they be who have by Christ's light lived a right judgment of things, and suffer that judgment to prevail over their hearts. The soul of most men is drowned in their senses and carried away with weak opinions, raised from vulgar mistakes and shadows of things. And Satan is ready to enlarge the imagination of the outward good and outward ill, and make it greater than it is, and spiritual things less, presenting them through false glasses. And so men, trusting in vanity, vanquish themselves in their own apprehensions. A woeful condition, when both we and that which we highly esteem shall vanish together, which will be as truly as Christ's judgment shall come to victory. And in what measure the vain heart of man hath been enlarged, to conceive a greater good in the things of this world than there is. By so much the soul shall be enlarged, to be sensible of misery when it sees its error. This is the difference between a godly wise man and a deluded worldling. That which the one doth now judge to be vain, the other shall hereafter feel to be so when it is too late. But this is the vanity of our natures, that though we shun above all things to be deceived and mistaken in present things, yet in the greatest matters of all we are willingly ignorant and misled. This is a sobering chapter. So much of this book has been comfort to the smoking flax, comfort to the one who is discouraged or wondering where they stand before God. That encouragement has been, look to Christ. Look to him, remember his great mercy. But here we face the reality of the judgment of God. And the reality is that over the course of this world's history, over the course of this life, that God is working out his plan, and that plan ultimately is a victorious plan. The challenge of that for us as Christians is that it grows as a seed in the ground. It grows in a very small way. Jesus himself said that this kingdom grows over the course of time. And although there is much kingdom fruit in our world today for which we're grateful, there is also much opposition and much just simple apathy, really, in the bottom line, and that is not a neutral thing. There is judgment that will be poured out on those who do not turn to God and trust in him. And that focus on today and the focus on earthly things is a pathway to ignoring God. And in the end, there'll be a great reckoning related to that knowing of God. And so to have a mind focused only on this life is a dead end, and an end which will not be good, will not be pleasing. So Sibbes brings some perspective in a broader sense to the comfort he's been bringing in this book, and it's worth noting and heeding in our own lives, and worth praying for others today, that God would rouse and bring life and awaken those who now are turned away from him. So would you pray that today for someone that you love and for the world? Thank you.